Emily had always believed her father, David, was a pillar of strength, a man who could face any challenge with calm and quiet resilience, the kind of father everyone admired, always present with a smile or a word of advice, always ready to help, always steady, the rock of their small family. Yet lately she had begun to notice subtle changes that disturbed her more than she cared to admit, small things at first, almost imperceptible, like the way he lingered in the living room after everyone else had gone to bed, staring out the window at the rain streaking down the glass, his face unreadable, the light from the street lamp casting long shadows that made him look older, fragile in a way she had never imagined. And when she tried to speak to him, to ask if he was feeling unwell or if something was troubling him, he would force a small smile and mutter something about being tired, leaving her heart uneasy and her mind racing with possibilities she did not yet have the courage to confront. And there were other signs, too, moments that lingered in her mind, like the time she found him standing in the kitchen in the middle of the night, hands gripping the countertop, staring blankly at the floor as though trying to steady himself against some invisible weight. And when he noticed her presence, he quickly composed himself, rubbing at his eyes and saying, "Go back to bed, Emily, it's nothing." And though she obeyed, retreating to her room with the soft click of the door behind her, her thoughts refused to settle, swirling around the image of his trembling hands, the subtle slump of his shoulders, the quiet sighs that escaped him when he thought no one was listening. And she began to realize that the father she had always known might be hiding something heavy, something that he could not, or would not, share with anyone else. And it frightened her more than she wanted to admit, because she had never seen him vulnerable like this, never seen him falter. And the thought that he might be carrying a burden alone made her feel both helpless and determined to understand, to help, even if he did not yet trust her enough to let her in. Then came the evening that would change everything, a night when the rain fell harder than usual, drumming against the windows with a relentless rhythm that seemed to echo her own heartbeat, her worry growing with every drop. And she noticed her father moving around the house in his usual quiet way, but this time there was a hesitancy in his steps, a pause in his usual routine, as though he were avoiding something, as though he were aware that the weight of his secret was about to be discovered. And Emily felt her chest tighten with both fear and anticipation, a strange mix of dread and hope that she would be able to reach him before it was too late. And as she passed his study, she noticed the door slightly ajar, the warm glow of a desk lamp spilling onto the carpet, illuminating a small, folded envelope lying on top of a stack of papers, an envelope that had not been there before, an envelope that seemed to call to her, whispering that it contained the truth she had been seeking. And for a moment she hesitated, her hand hovering over the edge, debating whether to respect his privacy or give in to the urgent pull of curiosity. And curiosity won, because the need to know, to understand, to help, was stronger than the caution her father's presence had always instilled in her. She carefully picked up the envelope, feeling its weight in her hands, noticing the neat handwriting that made it clear it had been addressed to him. And as she opened it, a flood of emotions washed over her, shock, disbelief, concern, and an aching love that was almost too heavy to bear. Inside were bills stacked with meticulous order, letters from various agencies, statements that seemed to multiply the problems she could barely understand, each document a piece of a puzzle that painted a picture of a life far more complicated than she had ever imagined, a life where her father had struggled silently, hidden from the world, carrying burdens that he had shielded from everyone, even her, his own daughter. And as she read through each paper, the realization hit her with a force that made her knees weak. He had been fighting alone, keeping the family safe at the expense of his own peace, and she felt an overwhelming surge of admiration mixed with sorrow, because now she knew the depth of his sacrifice, the hidden strength he had wielded in silence. And yet the fear of what these struggles could mean for their future gnawed at her mind, relentless and sharp, each scenario playing out in quick succession, her thoughts racing from the worst outcomes to the smallest hope, trying to find a way to fix what had been hidden for so long. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotion, but she also felt a quiet resolve begin to take shape, a determination that she would not let him face this alone, that she would find a way to help, to lighten the load he had carried in secret for so many years, even if he resisted, even if he tried to push her away with his gentle smile and quiet words, because love, she realized, was about more than admiration or gratitude. It was about action, about stepping into the storm with him, not standing outside and watching. That night, she sat in the study with the papers spread before her, tracing the lines of figures, the names of creditors, the notes written in small, precise handwriting, and for hours she felt the weight of her father's life pressing down, understanding for the first time that he had hidden more than money problems. He had hidden worry, disappointment, fear, and a deep, relentless desire to protect his family from pain, shielding them from the realities that had consumed his nights spent pacing, planning, and worrying in silence, and she realized how lonely he must have felt, how much courage it must have taken to carry such burdens without breaking, and the thought made her heart ache in a way she had never known, because she understood that the man who had always seemed invincible was human, vulnerable, and desperately in need of someone who would see him, truly see him, without judgment or fear, and she wanted to be that person, she needed to be that person, and yet a flicker of doubt lingered at the edges of her resolve. Would he allow her to help? Would he push her away, insisting that this was something she should never be involved in, something she could not understand? The uncertainty made her stomach twist, but her love and loyalty overpowered her hesitation, and she made a silent promise that no matter what, she would be there, that she would not let him face this alone, that she would find a way to bridge the distance that had always existed between his silent struggle and her desire to protect him in return. As the night deepened, Emily finally heard the soft creak of the front door, signaling that her father had returned from his walk, a walk he often took to clear his mind but tonight felt different, almost as if he had been avoiding the confrontation that now awaited him, and her pulse quickened, the envelope still clutched in her hands, the papers spread across the desk, because she knew that when he entered the room, the moment of reckoning would arrive, the point where secrets would either remain buried or finally emerge, where trust and love would be tested, and she braced herself, ready to face whatever came next, whether it was resistance, tears, anger, or relief, because she could no longer pretend that nothing was wrong, could no longer watch him suffer silently without stepping forward, and as the soft sound of his footsteps grew louder on the carpet, Emily's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope, knowing that everything was about to change, that the quiet house held a secret that could no longer remain hidden, that the bond between father and daughter was about to be tested in ways neither of them could predict, and with that thought, she rose to meet him, ready to take the first step into a truth that had been kept in the shadows for far too long, her hands trembling, her breath quick, but her resolve clear, because love, she understood, was not just in the easy moments, the laughter, or the smiles. It was in facing the truth, in stepping into the storm together, and she was ready, finally ready, to be the daughter her father needed, the person who would see him, hold him, and walk beside him through the darkness that had always seemed so impenetrable. And as David entered the room, the rain tapping against the windows like a heartbeat in the night, the first words passed between them carried the weight of years of unspoken emotion, a fragile bridge being built from fear to trust, from silence to confession, from isolation to the possibility of shared strength. And in that quiet, heavy moment, Emily knew that nothing would ever be the same again, that the journey ahead would be difficult, that tears and challenges awaited, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, the faint, bright pulse of connection, the spark of understanding that could begin to heal the hidden struggles of a father who had given everything for his family. And as they stood in the dim glow of the study, the storm outside echoing the turmoil within, Emily realized that the night was only the beginning, the opening chapter of a story that would test them, bind them, and ultimately reveal the depth of love that had always existed quietly, patiently, waiting for the courage to be acknowledged, shared, and embraced together. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of purpose mingled with anxiety, her mind replaying the events of the previous night, the weight of the envelope and its contents pressing on her heart, and she knew she had to act, not recklessly, but with care, understanding, and compassion, because her father, David, was a man who had always been her protector, yet now the roles were reversed, and she felt the heavy responsibility of stepping into his world, a world she had never truly known, a world of quiet burdens, hidden debts, and unspoken fears. And as she entered the kitchen, she found him already awake, sitting at the table with a mug of tea in his hands, staring blankly at the steam curling upward, his eyes distant, and for a moment Emily hesitated, unsure whether to confront him directly or let him speak first, sensing that patience might reveal more than questions, that gentle presence could coax the truth out without forcing it, and she chose the former. sliding into the chair opposite him and placing her hand softly over his, feeling the warmth, the subtle tremor beneath the surface, the way his knuckles pressed into hers almost unconsciously, and she simply said, "Dad, I want to help." A simple sentence, yet it carried the weight of her determination, of her love, and of the promise she had made to herself the night before, and David's gaze met hers, lingering, searching, filled with a complex mixture of relief, fear, and something Emily could not name but instinctively understood as trust beginning to form, fragile and tentative, like the first crack in a dam holding back years of hidden struggle. And for the next several hours, the silence between them was not empty but charged, filled with possibility, with the quiet understanding that words would come in their own time, that the pace of revelation had to match the rhythm of his willingness, and Emily respected that, letting him sip his tea, listening to the gentle hum of the morning, the rain from last night leaving tiny droplets on the window, reflecting light in fleeting patterns that seemed almost like signals, guiding her through the delicate process of breaking through the walls he had built around himself. By late morning, the tension in the air shifted slightly as David began to speak, at first hesitantly, in fragmented sentences, almost like testing the waters, revealing only glimpses of what had weighed him down, unexpected expenses, past decisions that had not turned out as planned, small failures magnified by pride and the need to shield his family, and Emily listened, nodding softly, absorbing each word without judgment, offering only her presence as a reassurance that he was not alone, that she could share his burden, that she could be trusted, and as he spoke, she noticed subtle changes in his posture, the way his shoulders relaxed slightly when he realized he could speak without being criticized. The small exhale of tension he had been holding for years, and it broke her heart to see how much he had carried alone, yet it also filled her with admiration for his strength, for the way he had navigated life's challenges quietly, putting the needs of others before his own, and she understood, more deeply than ever, the complexity of love, the sacrifices that often went unnoticed, and the courage required to endure in silence, and Emily's own feelings deepened in ways she had not anticipated. She felt a new closeness, a bond forged not just by blood, but by the shared experience of vulnerability and the willingness to face pain together, a bond that made her heart ache with both sorrow and tenderness, a mixture that left her breathless yet determined to see them through the storm that had been brewing unnoticed for so long. As the day unfolded, Emily and David moved carefully through the stack of documents she had found, sorting them, categorizing them, making small plans, each step an act of reclaiming control over a life that had seemed unmanageable, and she felt the power of collaboration, the quiet intimacy that came from working side by side, both aware of each other's emotional landscape, both walking a line between practicality and the fragile emotions that underpinned every decision, and she noticed the way he would glance at her occasionally, a fleeting look of gratitude, a softened expression that spoke volumes without words, and she responded in kind, offering smiles, small jokes, and encouragement, creating a rhythm between them that balanced seriousness with lightness, fear with hope, and as the hours passed, Emily realized how much she had underestimated the depth of her father's struggle, the meticulous care he had taken to keep the family life uninterrupted while silently battling stress, shame, and worry, and she felt a new sense of responsibility, not burdensome but vital, a calling to step fully into the role of both daughter and ally, to be a presence that could ease the load he had borne for years alone, and she embraced it willingly, feeling her own strength grow as she witnessed the vulnerability and resilience of the man she had always idolized. By late afternoon, the atmosphere had shifted in subtle but significant ways. David was no longer stiff, guarded, or distant, but more relaxed, more willing to share, more human in his expressions, and Emily could feel the walls around him beginning to crumble, brick by brick, under the gentle insistence of her care, her empathy, and her quiet determination, and it was in these moments of near silence, punctuated by the soft rustle of papers, the scratch of pen on notepad, and the occasional sigh or muttered reflection, that Emily truly saw her father, not as an untouchable figure, but as a man, a human being with flaws, fears, and immense courage, someone who had loved so fiercely that he had neglected his own well-being, someone whose heart carried burdens so heavy they had threatened to break him in ways the world could never know, and she felt a deep tenderness for him, a protective instinct so strong it left her fingers tingling where they rested on his hand, a longing to shield him from future pain, yet also a quiet respect for the life he had managed to maintain despite the hidden storm that raged within him. And she knew that helping him would not be easy, that there were obstacles ahead, that there would be moments of doubt, resistance, and perhaps even anger as the reality of their situation settled in. But she felt ready to face it all because love, she realized, was not only comfort and warmth, it was action, courage, and the willingness to walk through hardship together. Even as evening approached, and the sunlight waned into shadows, they continued to work together, creating lists, marking priorities, making phone calls, and negotiating small steps to regain stability, each success a quiet victory, each decision a reinforcement of the bond that had strengthened over the hours. And Emily marveled at the resilience she saw in her father, the ingenuity with which he approached each problem, the meticulous care he had once reserved only for others now shared with her in trust, and she felt a surge of admiration that mingled with love, pride, and a sense of purpose. And yet amid these practical measures, the emotional connection deepened further. She noticed the subtle softening in his voice, the flicker of warmth in his eyes, the rare laughter that escaped him when a small victory brought relief. And she realized that these moments were precious, a glimpse into the man he had been hiding behind stoicism, the man who had silently longed for understanding, support, and the comfort of someone who would truly see him. And Emily felt herself growing closer, emotionally and spiritually, sensing a bond that could withstand difficulties yet unknown, a bond that promised healing, forgiveness, and love that was quiet, deep, and unwavering. Late that night, as the house settled into a hushed calm, Emily and David sat together at the kitchen table, a few papers still scattered, a single lamp casting a warm glow over their shared work. And she noticed the first tear slide down his cheek, unnoticed at first, then caught by the edge of her fingers as she reached to brush it away. And in that simple gesture, words were unnecessary. The trust between them spoke louder than any conversation, the mutual understanding that they were no longer alone in facing the burdens of life filled the room with a fragile, beautiful intimacy, a gentle acknowledgement of shared struggle and mutual care. And Emily realized that in helping him, she had discovered a deeper love than she had ever felt. A love that went beyond filial duty into the realm of true human connection, empathy, and emotional closeness. And she knew that the journey ahead would test them, challenge them, and reveal depths of character yet unseen. But for the first time, she felt a steady pulse of hope, a certainty that together they could navigate the storms that had once seemed insurmountable. And as they finally stood, stretching tired limbs, and prepared to face the coming days, Emily caught a glimpse of the man she had always admired, softened and human, strong yet vulnerable. And she felt the quiet, profound joy of knowing that the bridge between them had begun to form, fragile yet unbreakable, promising that the next steps they would take would be walked hand in hand, side by side, hearts aligned in purpose, trust, and a love deepened by the revelation of truth and the courage to face it together. And as she turned off the lamp and the house fell into the gentle rhythm of night, Emily carried with her the knowledge that the real work, the emotional journey, had only just begun. But for the first time, she was not afraid, for the bond she shared with her father, forged in vulnerability, trust, and quiet determination, would be the light guiding them through whatever challenges lay ahead, a light that promised healing, connection, and the possibility of hope even in the shadows. The morning after their long night of shared confessions and quiet understanding, Emily woke with a renewed determination, the sense of purpose from the previous day still strong in her chest. And as she made her way to the kitchen, she found her father already awake, moving quietly with a deliberate slowness that betrayed both his lingering fatigue and the weight he had carried for so long. And she noticed the subtle tension in his shoulders, the faint shadows under his eyes, the way he paused occasionally as if gathering his thoughts before speaking. And it struck her that even now, after revealing so much, he was still navigating the delicate balance between pride and vulnerability, a balance she wanted to honor while offering every ounce of support she could muster, because she knew that helping him would not be simple, that the emotional road ahead was uncharted. Yet she felt ready, stronger, more connected than ever before. And as she poured herself a cup of tea and sat across from him, she saw him glance at her with an expression that was a mixture of gratitude, fear, and something almost like relief, a look that spoke of the trust slowly taking root between them, a trust that would guide them through the challenges yet to come. And she began the day with a quiet reassurance, a gentle "we'll get through this together," knowing that the simple words could carry more meaning than any action, and David nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly, a tentative smile that made her heart ache with both tenderness and hope. The morning passed quickly as they worked side by side, Emily guiding the organization of papers, letters, and statements, David explaining small details with a careful precision that revealed both his intimate knowledge of their situation and the relief of finally having someone to share it with, and together they began to see patterns, to understand what could be managed immediately, what required careful planning, and what might need outside assistance, and Emily felt the thrill of action, the satisfaction of progress, and the emotional intimacy of collaboration, noticing the subtle gestures that spoke louder than words, the way he would glance at her for reassurance, the way his fingers would brush hers accidentally as they reached for the same document, and the way his voice softened when he explained the history of a particular debt or concern, revealing not just the financial facts but the emotional weight attached to each item, and she listened intently, absorbing not only the information but the unspoken stories behind it, the sacrifices he had made, the nights of worry, the silent tears he had hidden from everyone, and she felt both admiration and sorrow, realizing the depth of love and protection that had defined his life even as it had burdened him. By mid-afternoon, Emily noticed a change in the rhythm of their interaction. Where earlier there had been hesitance, now there was a growing ease, a fluidity that came from mutual understanding, a shared purpose, and as they began making phone calls to gather information and clarify details, she felt a quiet excitement mixed with nervousness, knowing that each call represented a step closer to resolution yet carried the potential for unexpected challenges. And she watched as her father navigated these conversations with careful tact, explaining facts concisely while hiding neither worry nor hope, a delicate dance that required both honesty and restraint, and she offered support, reading his cues, providing gentle reminders or encouragement, and she noticed the subtle pride in his eyes as he realized he was not alone, that for the first time in years, someone stood beside him fully, ready to face the consequences and plan for the future. And in that moment, Emily understood that the bond between them had transformed from simple familial love into a deeper connection forged in adversity, trust, and shared vulnerability, a connection that made her chest ache with both protective instinct and admiration, a feeling she had never experienced so intensely before. As the afternoon wore on, they took a short break, sitting at the kitchen table with cups of tea, watching the light shift through the windows, and David spoke quietly about dreams he had once hoped to pursue but had set aside in the name of responsibility, and Emily listened, fascinated not by the details of ambition but by the emotion behind them, the longing, the small regrets, the quiet resilience that had defined his choices, and she felt a mix of sorrow and admiration, realizing that the man she had always viewed as invincible was human, fallible, yet extraordinary in his courage and commitment, and she wanted to hold that understanding close, to honor it with her presence, empathy, and determination to support him in reclaiming some measure of peace, knowing that this emotional connection was as important as the practical steps they were taking to manage his struggles, and she encouraged him gently to speak freely, to share memories, hopes, and fears, and as he did, the room seemed to hold a sacred quiet, a fragile sanctuary where vulnerability could exist without judgment, and Emily felt the power of listening, the intimacy that arose from witnessing another's hidden pain and responding with care, patience, and love, and in that moment, she realized the enormity of the trust he had placed in her, the depth of the emotional bridge they had begun to construct, and the responsibility she now bore to nurture it with sensitivity and compassion. By late afternoon, progress had been made, bills were organized, priority issues identified, and small solutions explored, yet Emily could see the lingering worry in her father's eyes, the shadow of stress that no amount of organization could erase immediately, and she knew that this was a process that would require time, patience, and consistent support, but she felt ready, determined to walk beside him every step of the way, to face challenges together rather than allowing them to remain hidden, and she noticed the subtle changes in his demeanor, the way he laughed softly at a small joke she made, the way he reached for her hand in a fleeting gesture of connection, the slight relaxation of tension in his posture, and she understood that healing, even incremental, was beginning, that trust and emotional intimacy were taking root in ways that would carry them through the most difficult moments, and she marveled at the quiet courage it had taken for him to allow her into this hidden world, the bravery of admitting vulnerability to someone he had protected all his life, and she felt both humbled and honored to be entrusted with this truth, to witness it, and to respond with love, care, and unwavering presence. As evening fell, Emily and David prepared dinner together, a mundane activity transformed by shared purpose, each movement imbued with quiet significance, the chopping of vegetables, the stirring of pots, the laughter shared over small mistakes, all contributing to a sense of normalcy returning amid the chaos of their earlier discoveries, and she felt the profound comfort of companionship, the emotional warmth of working side by side, and the subtle, growing realization that their relationship had shifted irrevocably, deepened by shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and the knowledge that they could face challenges together. Later that night, as the house settled into silence and rain began tapping gently against the windows, Emily and David sat together in the living room, the papers from the day stacked neatly on the desk, and she noticed the faint smile on his face, the subtle relaxation in his posture, the quiet gratitude that had grown visible in small gestures, and she realized that for the first time in years, her father was not alone, that he had finally allowed someone into the private struggles that had weighed on him for so long, and she felt an overwhelming wave of love and protectiveness, a mixture of admiration, empathy, and deep emotional connection, knowing that the journey ahead would be challenging but also filled with moments of intimacy, understanding, and shared growth. And as they sat in companionable silence, listening to the rhythmic sound of rain, Emily sensed the transformation in both of them, the creation of a new emotional landscape where vulnerability was met with compassion, struggles could be shared without fear, and love was expressed not only in words but in actions, presence, and unwavering support, and she knew that this was the turning point, the moment where their bond had shifted from routine family affection to a profound, mutual understanding, a connection that would guide them through the next steps, no matter how difficult. And as David finally rose to retire for the night, Emily felt the quiet thrill of hope, the knowledge that together they could navigate the storms that had once seemed insurmountable, and that the emotional bridge they had begun to build, fragile yet steadfast, would carry them forward into the challenges and triumphs of the days to come, a bond strengthened by truth, trust, and the courage to face life's hidden struggles hand in hand, heart to heart, side by side, knowing that the journey of healing, love, and understanding was only beginning, and yet for the first time, Emily felt a sense of quiet certainty, a belief that together they could face whatever lay ahead, that the shared burden of hidden struggles had become a source of connection, intimacy, and mutual strength, a promise of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love between a father and daughter who had finally discovered the true meaning of support, empathy, and shared courage. The next morning, Emily awoke with a sense of quiet determination, the bond between her and her father, David, feeling stronger than ever after the revelations and shared work of the previous days, and as she entered the kitchen, she found him already there, brewing coffee with the gentle precision of habit, his movements calm yet deliberate, the weight of yesterday's confessions still lingering in the air but softened by trust and mutual understanding, and she felt a surge of warmth, realizing how far they had come together, the invisible bridge between them now solidifying with each small act of care, each conversation, and each shared glance. And as she poured herself a cup, she noticed him hesitating for a moment, fingers brushing the mug as if seeking courage, and she reached out, placing her hand over his, offering reassurance without words, letting him know that she was ready to face whatever challenges remained alongside him. And he looked at her with a depth of emotion that made her chest tighten, a mixture of gratitude, relief, and quiet pride that spoke of the unspoken understanding they now shared, that this journey was no longer a solitary struggle but a shared endeavor, and together they began the day with renewed purpose, reviewing the plans they had begun, prioritizing what needed immediate attention, and making phone calls to resolve urgent matters, each small success fueling confidence and alleviating the lingering stress that had hung over the household like a storm cloud. And Emily noticed subtle shifts in her father's demeanor, the way his shoulders relaxed, the gentle smile that appeared more often, the occasional laugh breaking the tension, and she realized that emotional healing was unfolding alongside practical solutions, that the act of sharing burdens had created a space for hope, trust, and love to flourish, and she marveled at the resilience of both of them, the quiet strength that emerged from vulnerability, the courage it took to face the unknown together, and the way their hearts seemed to beat in tandem with each step forward, each challenge met with patience, empathy, and a willingness to adapt, and as the hours passed, they worked efficiently yet with care, reviewing financial statements, organizing documents, planning next steps, and seeking advice when necessary, each decision made with thoughtful consideration, and Emily felt a deep satisfaction in seeing the relief grow in her father's eyes, the tension easing, and the understanding that no matter what obstacles remained, they were facing them together, hand in hand, heart to heart, building trust and connection with every interaction. And she also noticed how their conversations shifted subtly from logistics to personal reflection, sharing memories, hopes, and dreams that had been unspoken for years, the laughter that bubbled up unexpectedly, the gentle teasing that brought lightness to tense moments, the quiet moments of silence that were filled with understanding. And she realized that the emotional intimacy they were cultivating was as important as any practical solution, that the true healing came not only from resolving problems but from rebuilding the human connection that had been overshadowed by hidden struggles, and that each step forward was a victory in itself, a testament to the courage of sharing burdens and the power of love to transform fear into hope, isolation into companionship, and anxiety into resilience. And as midday approached, Emily and David prepared lunch together, the mundane task now infused with quiet significance, the chopping of vegetables, the stirring of sauces, the arranging of plates becoming symbolic of the rebuilding of stability, routine, and connection in their lives, and Emily felt a sense of accomplishment, pride, and emotional fulfillment in witnessing her father gradually reclaim his sense of control, dignity, and peace, and she also felt her own growth, the strengthening of her empathy, patience, and courage, the realization that supporting someone through hidden struggles was as transformative for the helper as for the one being helped, and she embraced this knowledge fully, ready to walk beside him through whatever challenges still lay ahead. And as the afternoon sun cast warm light into the kitchen, David spoke quietly of hopes for the future, small goals of security and calm, and Emily listened attentively, offering encouragement, validation, and quiet suggestions, and she felt the depth of love that had always existed in her heart for him, now magnified by the shared journey, the trust, and the courage that had allowed them to reach this point. And as they continued working together, resolving lingering issues, contacting necessary services, and making plans for financial stability, Emily noticed subtle, beautiful changes in her father, the ease of his smile, the relaxation in his voice, the lightness in his step, and she understood that healing, even incremental, was taking hold, and that the bond between them had evolved into something extraordinary, a shared understanding, resilience, and love that would carry them forward through life's challenges, the quiet victories of the day reinforcing the foundation of trust and emotional connection. And by evening, as they sat together with mugs of tea, reviewing the progress they had made and reflecting on the steps still ahead, Emily saw in her father's eyes a mixture of gratitude, pride, and renewed hope, and she felt her own heart swell with tenderness, admiration, and a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that the journey had transformed both of them, deepened their relationship, and created a path toward stability, understanding, and emotional intimacy. And in the quiet of the evening, with the soft glow of the lamps and the faint sounds of the house settling into calm, David reached for her hand, squeezing gently, and whispered words that made her eyes sting with emotion, a simple thank you for being here, carrying the weight of years of silent struggle, the acknowledgement of trust, and the bond of shared courage. And Emily responded with a soft smile, her own voice trembling with emotion, affirming her commitment, love, and readiness to continue walking this path with him. And in that moment, the quiet, profound intimacy of parent and child, ally and partner, friend and confidant, enveloped them, a sense of hope, resilience, and love filling the room, promising that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them together, strengthened by trust, understanding, and the courage to be vulnerable. And as the night deepened, they spoke of dreams, hopes, and small pleasures, laughing softly, sharing memories, and acknowledging the growth and healing that had begun. And Emily realized that life had shifted irrevocably, that the shared journey had transformed them both, that love, courage, and trust had woven an unbreakable bond between them, and that the quiet house now felt like a sanctuary, a space of healing, understanding, and connection, a place where burdens could be shared, hearts could be open, and the promise of a brighter, more secure future could take root. And as they finally prepared for bed, Emily felt a profound satisfaction, knowing that the struggles of the past would no longer define their relationship, that the steps they had taken together had created resilience, intimacy, and a renewed sense of hope, and she knew that the days ahead, while still filled with challenges, would be approached with confidence, love, and the unshakable knowledge that they would face everything together, father and daughter, allies in life's storms, hearts aligned in understanding, courage, and a deep, abiding love. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, Emily felt a calm certainty, a soft, radiant hope that illuminated the journey ahead, and she knew that no matter what came next, their bond, strengthened through shared struggle, empathy, and unwavering support, would carry them forward into a future filled with connection, healing, and the quiet joy of facing life together, side by side, hand in hand, heart to heart, strengthened by the trials they had endured, and inspired by the love that had guided them through darkness into light, a love that promised not only survival but growth, intimacy, and the enduring power of human connection, a love that would remain unshakable, transformative, and eternal.